Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're telling the stories of Kansas City nonprofits and the people behind them. Casey Cares is the intersection of the nonprofit and profit communities, making Kansas City a better place to live, work, and play. Casey Cares is proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation. I'm Ruth Baum-Biggis. DEI has become a buzzword in both the nonprofit and profit communities. It stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And these issues are important to nonprofits to consider. Well, Redtail Academy was created with a desire to change the landscape of the aviation industry to make it more diverse, specifically for pilots. And the organization is looking to the next generation, our youth, to move the needle. And we are so excited to have with us today Redtail Academy and two of their board members. We have Sam White, who is a Delta pilot himself and a former Air Force pilot, and Jeff Bolden, board member, who's also a Delta pilot. I'm surrounded by pilots. This is so exciting. So, Sam, let's start with you. Tell us what Redtail Academy is. What's kind of your focus, your mission? And then we'll even dive into what the name means.
Absolutely, Ruth. As you alluded to and thanks for the opening and thanks for giving us the time to kind of recognize some of the efforts that we're trying to do in the local area. Our academy is trying to hit the grassroots of what we envision of the challenge of getting underrepresented youth interested and involved in aviation. And it starts with, really elementary school kids, but it extends through middle school and high school. Right now, our focus is primarily on high school students, although we have middle school program, but we want to be able to attract, inspire, and train those young people to achieve a private pilot certificate. And so we start with a ground school that we step them through about an 11-week program. And then interspersed in there, we have a flying simulator, which is unique to a lot of general aviation programs. But we introduced the simulator training to help them get what we call airplane ready. One of the things that we think is our brand as Redtail Academy is we bring in some of our experiences, both commercial airline pilots and military background, to help give a more improved product when they start flying.
Well, I have to brag on you. We're going to let you talk about the details for our audience. Sam is an Air Force veteran. Thank you for your service. Air
Thanks.
Force brat here. And tell us about this little stint of yours at Whiteman and this plane called a B-2.
Well, yeah, thanks, Ruth. Yes, I had the privilege of being a B-2 stealth bomber pilot, 2 assignments at Whiteman Air Force Base from 01 to 05, 2001 to 2005, and then again from 2008 to 2011. I had the opportunity to fly combat in Iraqi Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom. Had the opportunity to be a squadron commander there. I was the 393rd Bomb Squadron Commander, which traces its lineage all the way back to the Enola Gay. So that was a very proud moment in my career. So those almost 8 years was really, really awesome. I still pinch myself to think that was actually me in that airplane. I started out just like a lot of these kids in this area, had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I was fascinated by airplanes and caught the flying bug when I was 17.
Well, Jeff, I want to turn to you and find out about when you were bit by the flying bug and how were you exposed to flying?
Exactly. As Sam said, thank you for having us on your program. I was involved with aviation from a very young age. My father, he was part owner of a flight school in an aircraft servicing center in Topeka, Kansas. So from a very young age, I was exposed to aviation at the airport, hanging around him and all the other guys out there. So I got the bug at a very young age, and I had the opportunity to be exposed to it at a very young age. And I think that was the key. As I've gotten older and I've done the many different things I've been able to do in aviation, I realized that that exposure at an early age is what made the difference. And that's the thing that we're trying to give back to these kids through the Redtail Academy, is that same exposure that I was able to have from a very young age of being around aviation, being in that environment and being around people who wanted to see me succeed. So yeah, I've grown up in aviation, got my license at a very young age, and just kind of progressed through my career that way.
Jeff, when you all say you're looking for the underserved, let's be frank. Who are we talking about exposing to aviation, and why have they not been exposed?
There's probably various reasons. We talk about minorities in aviation. 7% of African Americans, I believe, is the number that I've seen, are currently involved in aviation as pilots. And we want to do more. We want to do what we can to bring more on board. When you talk about why they're underrepresented, there's a myriad of reasons. Cost, that's a huge barrier to getting people involved, and exposure. You know, typically minorities aren't involved in the general aviation aspect of aviation. Some go to the military, unless they have a parent like I had or a friend who's involved with aviation, just not that exposure. And that's what we want to do. We want to bring more of that exposure down. You know, I met my wife in aviation. I hate to tell the story, but that's kind of how I met my wife. And she
Please do.
No.
You should share that. Maybe you don't have her permission. Okay.
No, you know what? I was young. I was an instructor. I was 19 years old when I started instructing. And actually, our parents knew each other. And my dad said, hey, there's a lady that wants to learn how to fly. You should work with her. And we ended up working together. She went on to she got her private instrument license. And then she decided to take a career or get a job as air traffic controller to save up money so she could do more flying. And eventually she just settled on being an air traffic controller. And she retired from that after 23 years of doing that a few years back. But she hadn't been exposed to the air traffic control side up until she got in aviation, started flying, and realized she had a degree in communications. And she thought, this air traffic control thing is kind of cool. And it ended up working out for her. But even that exposure that she got there kind of transformed her and set her on a career path toward, you know, a really rewarding career. So that's what we want to do. You never know what's going to happen as we get kids involved in aviation. We have a nice downtown airport. We have a lot of nice airports here that people drive around and just kind of look over at. And, you know, we talk about being outside the gate looking in. And that's one of the things we want to do is open up the gate and let some of these kids inside so they can get a look from the inside of what aviation is like.
Sam, tell us a little bit about the programming of Redtail Academy. What is it exactly that you're offering?
Yeah, absolutely, Ruth. As I mentioned earlier, the foundation of our program is the private pilot course that we have, both the ground school and the flying. But exposure and getting that initial interest has to start at a much earlier age, because by the time people are teenagers, a lot of times they've already got kind of cemented in their mind what they think, you know, their borderlines are of their capability, what they want to do with their life. So we want to reach out to people and children in the middle school arena, and we've developed what we call an Aviation 100 program. And what it does is exposes these students to a broad range of aviation related subjects and career fields. Kind of like Jeff's wife, you know, maybe they're not interested in being the pilot, but there's lots of career opportunities in aviation that may interest them, whether it be air traffic control, aircraft maintenance, airfield operations like Jeff's dad did, you know, airplane sales. There's so many different opportunities that people just don't know about. So our purpose with that course is to kind of expose them broad brush about what aviation means and how they see themselves, how they can see themselves fitting into it. And a program that we have under development is an Aviation 200 course. And that's designed for high school students who don't know if they're willing to sacrifice both the time and the resources to start a private pilot's license, because that involves a pretty strenuous curriculum. So it's kind of the same type of subjects that you would see in Aviation 100, but just more vigorous, because we're really at the end of that course, we want to see if, hey, are you willing to commit to a ground school and a private pilot course to get your certificate? Another course that we're going to kick off here in the next week or so is the Unmanned Aerial Vehicle course. So remotely piloted aircraft, drones, whatever you want to call them, those have, over the last 5 or 6 years, have just skyrocketed in popularity. And the FAA is now offering a certification in that, which is good because it allows for safe operations. But you can be as young as 16 years old and get a certification under the FAA to operate those drones. And so what we'd like to do is offer a training program so that young people can get their license and operate those aircraft safely, and not just operate them, but understand how they can utilize them, you know, whether it be for personal use or even commercially, get hired to survey land and amongst the many uses that RPAs have. And then the last thing is we have visions of doing summer camps, you know, maybe a 2 or 3 week immersion with students from the local area. And, you know, it'll be a combination of airfield tours, air traffic control facility tours, more hands-on. Because, you know, young people, you know, they don't want to see classroom stuff. They want to get involved and do things that excite them, you know, and then that aviation bug can bite them at a young age, like it bit both Jeff and I. So that's sort of the broad brush range of programs that we're thinking about.
Jeff, I want to ask you, tell us the history or the background of the name Redtail Academy. I'm not sure everyone is familiar with what that term is and where it comes from.
Yeah, it's sort of a memorandum of the famous Tuskegee Airmen. And I don't know how much, I'm sure everyone's heard about the Tuskegee Airmen, what they were able to do during the Second World War, and some of the obstacles they had to overcome, and the success that they were able to have doing the mission that they were tasked to do. And Sam is actually the history buff on this one. He's really good at that one. But we wanted to pull from that. You know, we wanted to pay honor to those guys and the sacrifices that they made and the challenges they had to overcome. Because although they're not the same challenges today, there still are challenges that our kids are going to have to overcome to be successful. So yes, they ended up being called the Redtails because they had the tails of the aircraft they flew while they were protecting the bombers is painted red. We've carried that name down just, again, to honor what they did, their legacy. And, you know, recently we had an original Tuskegee Airman, General Charles McGee. He was at a ceremony at the downtown airport where they renamed the General Aviation Terminal in honor of him. So his name is now on that terminal. That was a big event. It was a couple of weeks back, and we got a chance to meet him and take some pictures with him. And next was plaque, so he got a chance to see us. So that was really special. That was really special to think that an individual that was actually there, who actually had to go through what he went through, was actually at our location, getting to see what we do, and we getting to, you know, spend some time with him. That was a special event there.
How cool. All right, Sam, so give us a little more history. I don't want to give short shrift and assume everybody knows about the Tuskegee Airmen. If you want to give us that little McNugget background of what they did, what they were.
Right, so, you know, Eleanor Roosevelt, right prior to the beginning of the Second World War, when there's a debate going around whether or not African Americans were competent in combat roles, because, you know, we were undergoing a huge mobilization at that time to bring forces to the various fronts. And, you know, Black Americans have always wanted to serve. They served in every armed conflict in our country, and World War II is no exception. And we wanted to be on the forefront with other Americans. And during the pitch to try to get that role fulfilled, Eleanor Roosevelt paid a visit to Tuskegee, then called Tuskegee Institute, in the early 1940s. And the chief pilot there was Chief Anderson. And she took an airplane ride with Chief Anderson. And after that ride, she was convinced that Black people had African Americans had the intellect and the courage to do not just fly airplanes, but also participate in combat roles. And from there, what was then called the Tuskegee Experiment was stood up. And the 332nd Fighter Wing is the most famous of those squadrons or wings groups. They went on to a lot of fame, both in Italy and over the skies of Germany, and served proudly. And it came to a point where most of the bomber groups requested those airmen as their cover. So we went from not being competent or being, you know, doubting their capability to being the requested bunch of people. And to kind of tie the knot, and why we chose them is because that's what we want our young people to be. You know, we don't want them to, you know, everybody, if we're being real, there's some biases that people have with minorities, you know, whether it be competence or mental ability or whatever. What we want to do is we want to provide the aviation industry with the best trained product. And so when you see the Redtail student, they'll be the ones that are requested, just like the Redtails were requested over the skies of Germany.
What a wonderful legacy to bring forward into current times. Jeff, the organization is pretty young. I believe you established in 2020.
Yeah, that's correct.
In a pandemic year. So tell us a little bit about how you organized and why you decided to do it as a nonprofit.
Aviation is something that, you know, first of all, my wife and I have always wanted to share. It was very rewarding to us, provided for us, and it was a gift that we wanted to be able to give to others. And I was fortunate enough to run into some like-minded people who shared that same passion, who shared that same desire. And we decided to do something. You know, we've talked about stuff for a long time. As you mentioned, it was during the pandemic. Airlines weren't flying much, and we're kind of sitting around twiddling our thumbs. So we had this idea of, hey, let's get this nonprofit up and going, you know, while we have some time. And it has been a whirlwind. We've done a lot. Sometimes when we sit back and we look at, you know, what we were able to do in that short year, we've done a lot. You know, we've got to touch some lives, and that's the main thing. That first year, we were able to get 2 students through our private pilot program. So that was very rewarding. We're still working on and reevaluating how we operate and what works and what doesn't work. This summer right now, we have 3 students going to the program. Actually 4. I say 3 to 4. We have 3 young ladies and 1 young man that's going to the program right now. So we're constantly evolving, working, trying to make it the program that we envision it being. And yeah, we're going to get there. We're always short. We're always running around. And again, you look at Sam and what I've done. You know, we both love aviation. We both have been instructor pilots for quite some time and in various capacities. You know, that's kind of the easy part. The running of a 501.
That's always fun.
And all the fundraise and all the stuff that we've had to learn since then, that's been the complicated part. And you know, so we're getting there. We're taking it all in, but it's been a lot of work.
Now, the kids that are in the program, do they apply for it? How does that side of things work? And is it free to them? Tell us a little bit about how that part of the organization works.
Yeah, Ruth, we've had an application process. We're trying to establish relationships with local schools and churches, other youth organizations. It's been largely word of mouth, how our word has been getting out, and we have a website and people have visited that. But yeah, we do have an application process. There are some academic minimums. We do an interview. We ask them to write an essay about why they want to learn how to fly, just to make sure that they're interested. We try to, you asked about the cost. It is cost prohibitive, and that's one of the barriers that we want to reduce. And so I wouldn't say it's free because we want the students to have skin in the game. They need to put in the work and help to raise some of the funds to offset those costs. But we do want to open that door so they're not having to fork over a whole lot of out-of-pocket cost.
So Sam, how do you approach then your fundraising? Again, you said I think Jeff said the 501c3 journey is a lot of fun. We've been through that ourselves. But I'm wondering, Sam, how do you approach fundraising? Where are you trying to do that so you can offset the cost for the kids?
Right. And that's where a lot of our learning has been in, because Jeff and I really just operate aircraft. We've been getting a lot of help and support in those veins. I learned how to write grants for grants, and we were fortunate enough to get a grant. Individual donations. We've been doing outreach, sending out the form letters to both individuals as well as companies, and trying to network with folks to see if we can find like-minded organizations to see how they can help where they can, especially aviation related organizations are willing to give donations, not of money, but some of them are giving their time, some of them are giving us equipment, some of them are giving us space or other resources. We're doing grunt work. We worked 2 air shows. We worked the air show at St. Joe, and then the one a couple weeks ago at New Century. Slaving. Jeff was on the grill. He thought he was a 737 captain, but apparently he could make a decent hamburger. We had our board members and family volunteers and our students out there helping us raise funds. But it's been the spectrum of fundraising, and I think that's been the steepest part of our learning curve.
Jeff, I want to ask you, is there a role for volunteers with your organization, and how do they find out?
And there are, and that's one of the things that we're working on right now. Finding exactly, we know we need people, and we also know that if we do have people, that we want to use them as strategically as possible. One of the things we talk about a lot is, being in your lane, and want to make sure that if we have volunteers that they're in their lanes, they're doing something that they love to do, that they feel comfortable doing. So those are the sorts of things that we're working through right now as we are looking at the different programs we have, the different needs of the 501. And eventually we will have a list, and you will be able to go to our website and sort of see some of the things that areas where we need volunteers and different ways that you can help if you want to help. And then be able to go in and just select, say, hey, yeah, I'd like to do this for you. And there's a long list. So should be something for just about everybody.
And the website, feel free to give us that address.
Yeah, it's redtailacademy.org. I don't know if I need to say the www part or not, but I get laughed at by the crew because I'm the least technical person in the group.
Well, my guess is you are more technical than you say, because you can fly an airplane, and that is certainly something I couldn't do. Sam, what do you all hope long term? Look 10 years out from now. What do you all hope Redtail Academy will be doing, things you've achieved?
We lay the foundation there's 2 goals. Jeff mentioned the low percentages of minorities that participate in aviation related career fields. That's been pretty much that level for about 80 years. So once the original Redtail Airmen opened the door for us. It's been largely stagnant after that. So I'd like to be those aviation related career fields to be commensurate with the population percentages that we see writ large. For the organization itself, I would like to see it self-sustaining. And what do I mean by that? I mean, I want to see Redtail Academy graduates go on and fulfill the roles of instructor at our school, run the maintenance of our school, you know, run the airport, you know, sell us the airplanes. I want them to be the tentacles of how this organization continues to grow.
Jeff, what's been the most challenging thing for Redtail Academy to take off? No pun intended.
Wow. You know, there's always rocks in the road, little obstacles that you have to overcome. You know, when you ask what's been the hardest, I think certain things are harder than others when you just don't quite have an understanding of them. For instance, fundraising. That's extremely hard for Sam and I to wrap our minds around and get good results from this, because it's just not something that we've ever done before. All of a sudden going, you know, as I grew up, my dad, you don't ask people for money. Now all of a sudden I'm asking people for money all the time. It's outside my lane, it's outside my comfort zone, which is fine. But those are the sorts of things, there's just, fundraising's been a big aspect of that, understanding how to do that and being good at that. And we're still learning, we're getting better at those sorts of things. But there's always little things that pop up. You know, Sam and I had a meeting this morning just about maintenance on the aircraft. We have an aircraft that's being utilized in our program, and you know, keeping it up flying. We're really big, especially since we come from the airlines, about safety and making sure we have more than what we need. More, I say more checks. We want everything to work the way it's supposed to work, and we want it to work as perfect as it can, you know, as often as so. But our maintenance has been a little frustrating right now as far as help and keeping the aircraft where we want it at. There's been challenges like that. But I think if I say what was the hardest, it'd probably be the fundraising aspect for me.
Is there any organizations you have turned to help you in your nonprofit journey?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sam?
Yes, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We have relationships with several other nonprofit organizations, notably the Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated, both the local chapter as well as the national chapter. You know, they have similar programs. You know, we want to feel that we have our own niche in training people to get a private pilot certificate. That's sort of unique amongst nonprofit organizations. But Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated has a similar program, or you know, their representative programs. The Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals, they have youth-related aviation training programs. Legacy Flight Academy also has youth-related training programs. So what we try to do is we meet with them routinely to try to trade lessons learned, so we're not trying to reinvent the wheel or have discovery in opportune moments. You asked one of the biggest challenges. Mine is more kind of esoteric, I guess. Donald Rumsfeld used to say and he got a lot of grief for this, but I know exactly what he's talking about, especially in this experience. There's known knowns, there's known unknowns, and there's unknown unknowns. And that last thing is what's going to bite you. And I think in our group, when you run across the unknown unknowns, and it's a lot bigger than what you think a bigger issue than you think it would be, then you end up spending an inordinate amount of time on it. And when you got volunteers, you got to be very focused on what you want them to do. They got real jobs and whatnot, and with the time requirement can really sneak up on you.
Well, Sam and Jeff, we thank you so much. It's Redtail Academy, redtailacademy.org. Check them out. We wish you the best of luck in your journey, and we appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much, Ruth. I really appreciate you having us on your show today.
Yeah, big thanks, Ruth. We appreciate you.
You bet. Thank you for listening to Casey Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by Charitable Communications, and we're proudly sponsored by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation. To be a guest on Casey Cares or underwriting opportunities, please visit our website at caseycaresonline.org. And you can spread the love and find us on Facebook and Twitter at Casey Cares Radio and on Instagram at Casey Cares Online. Don't forget, you can catch us on ESPN 1510 AM and 94.5 FM, Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. Thank you for tuning in to Casey Cares.